also is from Zimbabwe. Then I think Juliana is staying at Abuja in Nigeria. So because of time constraints, I will just think that we'll start right away. So first of all, like I explained in the introductory stuff or in the message I sent, you know, most of rural communities in Africa are somehow not reflected in the reporting of journalism work we do all over all the time. It's something that's happening in Nigeria, it's happening in Zimbabwe, it's happening in many places. So the idea that somehow we think we can achieve effective development without including the vast majority of people in rural areas, honestly, I don't think it's sustainable and it will make sense. So that's part of the import of this research. So also see how we reflect local voices in our reporting. So by word of the first question I just want to ask, for example, for us to even evaluate the news ecosystem as they exist in different regions of Africa, where of institutions, you know, collaborations and people that local communities in your areas or in your countries rely on for news, information, and engagement. We can start with Chubala.
Greetings, Dr. Ochina. I think I missed the question. I was at a connectivity challenge.
Okay, I said, can you name, I just want us to start by understanding the news ecosystem within your countries, especially the rural areas of your countries and stuff. So, and I wanted to see if you can name some network of institutions, collaborations, and people that local communities rely on for news, information, and engagement.
Okay. Yeah, and if I understood you well, you would like to appreciate the various available media in the rural areas.
Yes.
Is that a correct position?
Yes.
All right.
That means
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So primarily, we have a growing media landscape in Zambia, including in rural areas. So we have seen a number of radio stations that are being set up in various rural parts of the country. And of course, I think those are given that in urban areas they're readily available, but in rural areas also we have seen an increase in the number of community radio stations that primarily focus on issues that are localized, whereby the local communities are able to share information using those platforms, including issues to do with farming, culture, the local economy, and the like. So usually the content is localized within the areas in which the stations are set up.
Any other person?
And you,
go ahead.
Are you able to get me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So primarily in the rural areas of Zambia, there's high dependence on community radio stations that are able to churn out information that primarily deals with the local issues. Of course, with a bit of content from the national level and the international level, but primarily the community radio stations that have been set up in most parts of rural Zambia provide local content. So I think that would be that would be my contribution for now, but maybe suffice to also add that with the coming of internet provision, there's been an increase also in access to internet services in rural areas, whereby people are able to also engage through the social media platforms and the like, and internet. That not, but that is not to say the rural areas have really moved to a level where you can say the penetration of internet and use of internet is up to the levels that you'd expect it to be compared to urban areas. But to a certain degree, there is also an appreciation of use of social media platforms for them to access news, to share news, and also to share the positions on various issues that concern them as communities and indeed at national level, the national affairs. So I think that would be my contribution for now, but I should be able to add other aspects as we go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there a particular medium that you can mention, like any community radio you know of that is doing a good job, like other community radio, a local newspaper in your community, in different communities, probably yours or something?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I think if you talk about, so I can talk about a number of radio stations primarily that I would say they're very active in the various provinces. To start with, for instance, in Eastern Province of Zambia, we have Breeze FM, we have Mhanya FM, we have Explorer FM, we have Chipata TV, and many others. And definitely these are able to engage the public and churn out information that is really going deep to the interest, to address the interests of the local communities. And you realize that most of these radio stations mainly thrive on phone-in programs, which give people an opportunity to directly engage with other listeners, to air their views, and also to comment on various issues that are affecting them in their communities and indeed in the at national level.
Okay.
And I think that they have also proved to be a good avenue for decision makers and the leadership, the local leadership, in the policy formulation and also in setting up programs that or activities that directly impact the well-being of the people and give a feedback mechanism. So I would say Eastern Province of those radio stations. If you come to, for instance, Southern Province of Baita FM, we have Mosotunya, Falls FM. I think those are some of those outstanding radio stations. If you go to Western part of the country, we have Mungo FM, we have Liseli FM. If you go to Luapula Province, you have Yangeni radio station, a community radio station. In Northern Province, you have Mano FM, we have Lutando FM, we have also, I think Mpolokoso also has a radio station, and there are quite a number of them, but to just mention a few, we have also the Tanganyika radio station that is supposed to be on air very soon in a place called Insumbu, which is just on the border with DRC and others that are sharing Lake Tanganyika. As you may appreciate, Lake Tanganyika is shared by the 5 countries: Zambia, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Tanzania, and Burundi. Yeah, if my recollection serves me well. Yeah, so those are the countries, parent states that share that. If I go to, I don't know if I can go on. I think I have quite a number of.
Let's welcome another contribution from my other participants there, because we have about 4 or 5 other questions to cover within this space time we have. Is there any person who wants to
thanks,
on describing the media ecosystem in your various countries, especially like the network of institutions and collaborations that local people rely on for news, information, and civic engagement? Dr. Natasha, do you have any perspective from Cameroon?
Yeah, mostly some of the newspaper are French newspaper. But we have the Herald as one of the main issue in the South, in the Anglophone provinces, in the Anglophone states of Cameroon, right? We have the Herald. In the French-speaking part, we have many newspaper, and like Le Jour, we have many Le Jour, La Nouvelle Expression. We have those newspapers that usually the local community rely on for information. And you have also as well, as everywhere else, government newspaper, right? But usually the people do not rely that much on those subvention government newspapers because, of course, they are subventions, so they have an editorial line so they can go out of that line. So these are some of the newspapers that we have in Cameroon, the Herald. And recently, with the Anglophone crisis, we have more and more newspapers like as the crisis is for independence. We have South Cameroonian, like more and more, like more like related to Anglophone, to the specific to Anglophone community or to the independentists. Those newspapers where some community can rely on. There are even small, like small newspaper that are actually like farming, taking care of the refugee of the crisis, like giving some local news. They're like really a low stake newspaper. But I can say that most of the community can rely on, like a great majority of the community can rely on those newspaper, right? Yeah.
Okay. Any other Cyril? Okay.
Say it again.
Go ahead. You finished? Cyril, are you with us?
Yes. So this
Okay, go ahead.
So that is for Cameroon. There are many government subvention newspaper, but they are not that much trusted by the people, like by the community. So when they want to inform themselves, they know that they will have maybe some official news on the government newspaper, but when it concerns like major political, like to have the facts of major political or the political life of the country, they will not go to those newspaper, right? So yeah, so that is I guess it's because we are in a situation of crisis. This has not always been the case. In the past, we could rely. I remember we could rely on the past on what we have read on those government newspaper. But it's not much the case now that there is the major political and economic turmoil in the countries in the country. Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward, except if there is any other contribution on this subject, one other thing I also want to point out is, like in the literature, we discover that because most rural people are not covered very well, their needs
I
and their...
can hear you.
No, I said that what happens in most African countries, most rural communities, because their voices are often not reflected in the scheme of things in national newspapers and all that, because most newspapers do is to cover government, talk about...
It's breaking up.
Sorry. So my question is, and because of that, it causes a lot of problems in terms of inability of some rural dwellers to participate in governance. They don't know the priorities of government and so on. So my question is, what is the impact of reduced accountability and information deficits? Okay, we're back. Hello?
Hello.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, the fact that when rural communities, when their voices are not heard on national issues and so on, there is the tendency that governments they can't hold government accountable sufficiently. So my question is, this information, the reduced accountability system that results from the drawing of voice of local people and the information deficit, what do you think is the impact it constitutes in governance and the participation of rural people in democracy in Africa? Anyone can come in. Juliana, are you on? Hello? Hello? Natasha, did you get the question? Cyril? Hello?
Yeah, I get the question.
Yes.
Cyril, did you get my question?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. The network is not good here.
Oh, okay. So Natasha, can you go ahead? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I say the network.
Yeah, but I can hear you.
Okay, super. The network it is not good.
Okay.
And I am asking, what is the question?
Okay, the question is, can you describe to me the situation in Burkina Faso, the extent to which the new, local people, their opinions are reflected in reporting, you know, that local news, local journalism. What is the nature of local journalism in Burkina Faso? By local news, I mean
Okay.
how people in the villages and poor people, how are their views reflected in the reporting that occurs in Burkina Faso media, Burkinabe media?
Okay, thank you very, very much. Note that here we are in an exceptional situation. It is not a normal regime. We are in a transition since 2022, and we had two coup d'etat in 2022. The first happens in February, and the second in September 2022. And since this time, we see that there is many restrictions for media and even in social media. The government take a number of decisions to forbid some publication. You are not allowed to say something different from the official version. And right now, this month, many journalists have been arrested and taken to the front to fight. Note that if you write something or if you say something on media, even on social media, you have they come to arrest you. If you say something different from the official version, they come and arrest you. And they take you to the front to fight terrorists. This is the situation right now, and many people avoid to speak publicly, to speak on social media and on traditional media. This is the point, because the only thing we can say is that things are good, things are government is fighting very well terrorism. So we should not say something different.
Okay.
This is the crucial situation here. And note that they just suspended 3 media and 3 commissions. I don't know the name in English. Media have been suspended, and media programs, some immediate programs, popular programs was suspended also, and many journalists are arrested.
Okay, thank you, Cyril from Burkina Faso. That's I imagine really that being in a transition like you described from a military regime and all that, probably yes, that could have some chilling effect on media, on freedom of expression. But it will be surprising that even in some other countries that, as like Nigeria, that has democracy, it's probably almost the same thing. You know, like what you're describing. That's the irony of it. And I'm sure that Natasha, you're from Cameroon, I guess your own is even worse, probably. So we want to share some thoughts on that.
I think that I guess that you all know the situation of Cameroon at this moment. That is one of the longest dictatorial regime like on earth at this point, if I can say so. So of course that goes with the really restricted freedom of the press. So local press, as I said at the beginning, is mostly interested in in trivial matters like in farming and all the stuff like how do you say that the everyday news like maybe a dog bite someone in this neighborhood and the stuff, but they don't go deeply into political issues or governance issues. So and the very few that do at time are said to be in collaboration of the with the government, so they can go against the like usually they don't go against the political stand of the government. Those who do at times, you will have cases of journalists who have been in prison or who are living in exile because there is no freedom of the press. So the democratic progress process in Cameroon for cannot go through the printed press. At times it's through social medias because they can't control it very much now. That people are more free to talk, and people usually who have the social media platform do not live in the country. So that is the situation in Cameroon. So mostly like the majority of the press works for the government, and even at time when they say that they are free press, they will not go deeply into matters that will endanger the government policy. And there are very few of them, I said, la nouvelle expression, that will go, but that will makes as if they are actually going like against some governmental policy, but it's just informational. They're giving just information. Maybe this minister has been nominated, this minister has been auditioned, or etc. But they don't go deeply into the governance issues. You have maybe two or three that at time will go into into the political or governmental issues, but not very much. You know, the democratic process I cannot say that the democratic process in Cameroon can rely on the printed press, and it's mostly on the social media that people get information on some platform because there's more freedom on the social media platform than in the printed press. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I just saw a text from Juliana Taiwo from Nigeria. She says that what you're describing is almost happening in Nigeria. That's amazing to hear. Yet Nigeria has a democracy. And Chibuala from Zimbabwe, the description you gave earlier on, okay, painted a very rosy picture of the media in Zimbabwe. I mean, sorry, in Zambia, where you are right now. Do you think that the impact of reduced accountability and information deficits actually exist within rural communities? Or do you still have this tendency of restrictions like Cameroon and Burkina Faso just described?
Thanks, Doc. Yes. So in Zambia, we have a few instances where there is there are challenges for media personnel to report, but as earlier submitted, primarily I think there's been freedom of the press. There's been, the media has been given space to operate without much interference. However, there are a few instances where you find that mainly political party youths would victimize media personnel when they go to carry out their work. So in some instances, that creates a self-censorship, which at the end of the day deprives the public of the accurate information, because sometimes media personnel will have to weigh the information they gather, how they process it, and how they disseminate to the public. So you find that that could create some gaps. However, generally, I think the media is free to operate, both those in urban areas and rural areas. Maybe the only other challenge that could inhibit their work is a lack of specialization because of limited financial resources. So you find that they may not be able to specialize in a certain field for them to fully report from a well-informed perspective. So that in some instances hampers their operations and how they deliver the news and other information that has to be shared with the wider public and really the communities in which they operate. The other aspect that could, to some extent, contribute to the information gap or how the media packages this information is that due to financial constraints on the operations of the media houses, they have to then depend on private entities for adverts and things like that. And you find that if a certain institution, a private institution, or even a public institution is buying so much of your airspace, or in instances of radio or instances of newspapers, where a particular institution is the one that is buying, putting adverts most of the time, you find that there's this likelihood of media personnel not really covering that institution in a very critical way or ensuring that they provide the necessary checks and balances.
Okay.
The other...
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the other challenge is that because a number of these media houses are operating on shoestring budgets, you find that in most instances, when they send out their reporters in the field, the reporters have to be given transport refunds for them to move to and from their newsrooms to the event of the venue for the event, and for them to go back and things like that. And so you find that that somehow compromises. And I think it is my considered view that that trend, which regrettably is growing, has a serious detrimental effect on the freedom of the media to operate independent of the sources. I remember during the time I was practicing actively as a journalist, the newspaper I worked for, it never allowed us to get a transport refund. We were always provided with a transport or other ways of easing our mobility.
Exactly.
But however, currently we're having this issue whereby when media personnel are supposed to go and cover the news or do interviews, the person who is facilitating has to ensure that they reimburse their transport money. I think that to me affects the operation, and that is even more critical for media houses that are operating in rural areas, because they do not really have many advertisers, or they do not even have many other sources of income, and that at the end of the day further constrains their operations. So Dr. Uchenna, I think that would be my contribution and my response on that.
Thank you so much. As a segue to this, except there's some other contribution from anyone, I really want to move in from what Chibola said to maybe moving to the next conversation about exploring new business models for media organizations to thrive, especially those ones in the rural areas. Meki El Mograbi from Sudan. I don't know whether I have any ideas on this. But meanwhile, what I've discovered in the literature is that as local news providers, especially other, gravitate away from traditional advertising funded business models, philanthropy has emerged as a potentially important source of revenue for many outlets, because philanthropy could come in different ways, either institutional or individual, like people donating to organizations, as, knowing that these organizations speak for them. All right. But I don't know how the prospect of such nonprofit news or philanthropy in funding local news, around Africa as a whole. So can anyone discuss that likelihood of philanthropy, supporting businesses, or in a situation like that too, where they want to discuss other ones? There's one that is happening in Australia where they have, through legislation, the government made Google and Meta the owners of Facebook, because most of these media outlets do kind of pick content from them. So they made them to start paying some money. And media organizations in Australia, they have raised about $200 million so far on this endeavor. Because most of the time, when you use all this social media, each time you click, you are making someone rich and you're enriching them. So if government can have a legislation in different parts of Africa to say, you know what, we are really a huge chunk of your audience, helping you to grow, whereas our media organizations are not doing well. So these are scenarios I want us to look at. Or others have also canvassed some ideas about giving tax rebates or incentives to proprietors of these organizations as a way of supporting rural development. Some have even said that even when you advertise with these local news outlets, that government can say, okay, if you advertise in this, you get some tax rebates. So let's look at this in totality to see how we can change or shift from the existing and unsustainable revenue stream of media organizations. I yield. A lot to unpack, right? Okay, Kenneth Koka, for you you're actually an economist, even though you're a journalist. But would you want to share some perspectives on the possibility of enhancing the prospect of growth, avoiding this traditional method of revenue? Because resource challenge is a big issue in media development. I can see Kenneth Koka, you're here, right?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, so I'm saying that because of your background, you've been at the economic side of Nigeria business or something, having been stock exchange and all that. So would you have some ideas of how reporters or media owners, especially those in rural areas, can capitalize either on the capital market or any other source of revenue to be truly independent and to be able to operate, or some other creative ways they can really turn around to see, okay, you know what, we can survive without really depending on the traditional method of begging money or even looking up to government. What are your thoughts?
All right, doctor. My immediate response is this. Philanthropy as a funding option, I don't think is sustainable in Nigerian environment, for one. For another, it also will constrain independence of the media, because he who pays the piper will definitely be seen as calling the tune. So you don't want to go that route for the sake of media independence. Now, talking about new business models for the media, I think we can't really look at all of this in isolation of emerging trends in the media environment. social media is an emerging force in the way we relate to news and how we use news and how we disseminate news. And they have become a veritable challenge to the mainstream media, the formal media business as we used to know it. And the question now arises as to how do we operate as to retain our place as a reliable news source, even in the rural areas. I think the new business models that we should be looking at is a situation whereby you no longer go into media establishment just for the sake of going into media establishment. The funding arrangements has to be given a good thought ab initio. You just don't go in there and then start looking for funding. Maybe after the first print run or second print run or so, you now find that you don't have advertisers coming in. And advertisement is a function of advert patronage for media houses actually is a function of circulation and then the target audience for the advertiser. The person that will want to advertise in the rural area, what kind of audience are they looking at? If the audience is not there, there's no way you see them advertising in that particular community. And I'm looking at a situation whereby if we are going to focus on the coverage of the rural areas, we just definitely must be seen as thinking out of the box with regard to funding model. The funding model has to be reviewed in a very fundamental way. For one, you have to know at the back of your mind that the money, given the structure of our economies out here in the continent, the rural areas don't even have the money. So in terms of revenue coming from sales, you won't even get it. So whoever is going there must be going there either as an NGO committed to reporting the rural areas, educating those residents in the rural areas, or entertaining them. So the profit motive just will not be there, should not be there. And as an NGO, they must have an established revenue source that should enable them operate independent of revenue being generated from the rural areas or not. So that funding arrangement must be in place ab initio, right from day one. You just can't go there and then hope that maybe getting philanthropists to fund you would help you overcome the resource challenge. No, that has to be in place right from the beginning. And then depending on a third-party funding, like I said, it's just not an appealing alternative because you'll be compromising media independence.
Okay,
So
let me even stop you there so I can continue. From what you're saying, you see, people are looking at the media or information sharing really to be seen as a public good. Just like you see people have hospitals in communities, you see people have firefighting equipment and all that. So information should be treated as a public good. That's the current argument. So, but from what you're saying, can I even ask a question? Is there really an appetite in rural communities in Africa for them to have means of sharing information? Is there appetite existing at all? Because if the appetite is not there, that means we don't think it's important, and therefore there should not be even any talk about investing in it.
I think there's an appetite.
Okay.
We live in a global village, like you know, and the way it is, the way societies are organized these days is such that wherever you might be, you want to know what is going on around you in your immediate community and beyond. So the appetite is there. And like I said, social media thrives these days, not so much because they are doing anything differently, but because there's a large appetite for information all over the place. So the appetite is there. The question now is, to what extent are people willing to pay for that information? If you look at the economics of the rural area, the money is not there. So they are not in a position to pay. And then talking about public good, if you are talking about public good, you now might find yourself in a situation where you now be dependent on government or its agencies to see to the discharge of the media role with regard to life in the communities. And you don't want that kind of situation. You don't want government involvement. That independence has to be protected. It has to be protected. If you make it public good, then it becomes compelling on anybody who operates in that space to be seen as serving public good. Meanwhile, how you do it should really be something, a decision you have to make yourself, not depending on somebody to guide you. That's the way I want to look at it at this point in time.
Okay. Is there any other perspective from any other part of Africa like that are represented in this group? Natasha, do you have some views about funding stream, new funding stream in Cameroon? Because as Chubala raised this point actually about how the revenue challenge also affects development of the media and rural areas in Zambia. It's something actually I believe across the continent, even in America, honestly. But the thing is, I'm thinking that we may have to put a different thinking cap to devise other methods that may not have been tried in the past. So I would like to, hear from you. Are there some creative ways you think this thing can happen, independent of government, even though we can hardly really avoid government involvement, because even if we're talking about creating some legislation that can help this, government will still have to play a role at the end of the day.
At some point, it just break off, so I didn't completely get the question. Can you please repeat, please?
So what are potential funding avenues for media in Cameroon, or especially new funding ways, apart from the traditional advertising and all that government support?
I think that that is a really a crucial issue, the issue of funding. And as elsewhere, as the other participant just said, it's not easy to get away from the traditional funding, the government fundings and and advertising. And usually people would definitely in some media would go beyond and have the sponsorship of some, how do you call it, the donor, the private donor. But that being said, having donations from specific agency like the NGO, having some funding, some journals are funded by that, but very few at time from abroad, community abroad. But at some point it will it poses a problem of the independence, because those who are funding you, those who are participating in your activity, you can speak against them if a matter arises in concerning them. So, and a creative way, I think so, but it hasn't yet been implemented by the press, or maybe I don't know of it. Might be that I don't know, like the social media offers like when you have the traditional media, if you have a social media platform with the new media, etc., if you maybe have some, some shorts or some reels that you can advertise to Facebook, being self-funded, like some platform who are more digital now than printed. They have the printed media, but at the same time, they will have some reels that they will put on social media, and not only on one social media, on Facebook. They will have it on TikTok. If you have it on TikTok, on Facebook, and you have it on Instagram, like just some highlight, maybe 1 or 2 or 30 seconds of some insight, and then you might get some, you might get some revenue from that. From That is not actually depending on specific, on specific agency funding you and being tied when you have to be to be impartial to speak, you know. So this is what I'm thinking, but very few of them have experimented that. It's mostly like independent journalists that will go on social media, but very few like traditional media that's still holding holding on the traditional printed way. Why there are many.
I want to hear the views of John Bosco. I think you work for the Vanguard.
Okay, thank you.
So, and that's a private entity. So, how have you sustained are there creative ways that you think can be replicated either in the rural areas to support local journalism? John Bosco.
Oh, thank you. I think this is a very big challenge, especially in this part of the of the world. Even private media houses like my establishment, finds it difficult, in this present economic hardship in the country. Going to rural areas, I think it is a big challenge in the sense that when you're talking about community journalism, it's all about that environment, about that particular space. You're trying to highlight some of their problems, some of the challenges they're having. And the only way sometimes, you may is when you have philanthropists, some God-spirited individuals from those areas who may have one enterprise or the other that may try to, showcase what they are doing and the efforts they have made, in the community, for the good of the community. But generally, honestly, it has been a great challenge in this part of the world, especially in Nigeria. The private media houses are finding it very difficult, to survive, and that's one of the reasons that financially some of them are not up to date. To discover that they have some problems, with their staff because they are not able to, meet up with their financial obligation. Now, if you rely on government, you have mortgaged their conscience. There are certain things, especially this part of the world, there are certain things cannot write against the government. It can.
Sorry, guys, I lost you guys. I lost you guys. I think John Bosco was speaking, and while he was on, I think I saw Winnie from South Africa. Winnie, you're welcome to the conversation. Go ahead. John Bosco, go ahead with your thoughts.
Okay, you say lost. I mean, I've rounded off what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say in effect is that in this present economic reality, it's difficult. But I gave an instance in my community where we have a community newspaper. The only way we sustain that newspaper is every hamlet, every kindred, we have a particular time that our palm trees, nobody harvests his or her own palm tree. The community will now take it. So, for instance, this particular month, the community is taking whatever will be the process from the pantry to take care of this newspaper. And nobody goes to his farm to harvest. And within that month, whatever is generated is used to, sustain the paper. But generally, apart from some of the philanthropists from those communities who have one type of business or the other, once in a while, they pump in some money for us also to showcase what they are doing, to showcase their business. But apart from that, generally, it is difficult, to sustain, community, newspapers.
Oh, great. That's I'm going to explore this further with you. I think it's a very great idea. I've never heard about it. And I think it's something perhaps other communities could replicate or expand on it. Okay, in the view of all this scenario, except if there's another opinion, I think we lost Winnie Bakajika from South Africa. She is actually originally from Democratic Republic of the Congo, but she is working in South Africa. I think we lost her. Maybe she will join us back. I also want to look at the concept of media policy. Do you think if we have an effective media policy that's, well, some people might even talk about other things like FOIA laws and all, but I'm specifically talking about a media policy that can play a role in building a strong, sustainable, and vibrant local media ecosystem. Do you think it's something that could help to gin up what we're talking about? And this policy, for example, could also, like what I just mentioned a short while ago about what happened in Australia, that is fetching them a lot of money. Again, there is a book, I don't know if you guys can come across, it's called Cost of Connection. Each time you click anything, all this Facebook or whatever you're clicking, you're making someone rich. In other words, there's this concept, we talk about digital colonialism, whereby all of us have become slaves, making money for someone who is not paying us. So now like in Australia, what they have done with a legislation was to compel Google and Meta, owners of Facebook, to bring part of the profit they're making to support local news. And so far, they've generated about $200 million. Media houses in Australia have generated $200 million to that. I mean, from that source. I don't know if it's something that could be replicated like in other countries, and this could be done by people building a coalition, because it's not going to be an easy task. Because if you make it a law, then obviously they'll be chipping in some little sum of money to support media development. That's one option. But like John Bosco just described a unique thing in their community. That's even something other people can also consider. But I just know that it's only that doesn't have a solution. People can devise creative ways of, navigating certain problems. So I don't know whether there's any contribution to that. Thereafter, I will just ask a simple question about, are there ways we can develop a strategic framework for local news coverage? I yield.
I think, can I say something?
Go ahead.
Okay, I think what we we have to acknowledge the fact that the times are changing, and we also must be seen as changing with the times, the media industry in particular. And at this point in time, there's a great need for some housekeeping. And talking about housekeeping, there's a need for a formalization of media houses. We have to put in place structures that recognize that this is a business. As a business, it must attract capital. It doesn't have to be the traditional one-man kind of business. Without that founder, as it were, the business collapses. It shouldn't be so. We should now be thinking about a governance arrangement that will encourage other persons to also bring in money to support whoever is the owner of the business. There has to be some level of transparency in the funding of the business. There has to be some level of transparency in the utilization of money coming to the business. So structure is one thing that has to be looked at. It is very, very important. We should also be seen as leveraging, because really at the end of the day, we've been talking about traditional media, and evidently much of what we do in this part of the world is still traditional. The moderator talked about policy, media policy. Do our media houses have media policy? Just in the run-up to the UK elections, and even in the US, in the forthcoming US elections, we've seen media houses taking position as to what should be done, as to who should run and who should not run. Because of lack of media policy in this part of the world, you have a situation where you don't even know where our media houses stand on issues of national or community importance until we begin to see them take a position as to what is important within the community or the nation. There's no way they can attract the kind of support that might come from whether you like philanthropists or just regular investors wishing to support an idea. Whoever is going to put his money in a particular venture must have an idea of what the venture is about.
Absolutely.
And it's not enough to just put on, say on paper that this is our media policy. The media houses have to be seen as living that policy. If you are pro-labor, you should be seen as indeed a pro-labor media outlet. If you are conservative, you have to be seen as a pro-conservative media house. That is the only way. We have to be seen as making that distinction because that is the only way anybody can support us in what we are trying to do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And yeah, that's it.
Go ahead.
No, I wasn't, I didn't start with you, but from the conversations I had at the point I logged in, I was trying to look at the issue of whether the media in Africa or in Nigeria in particular are free or not. Well, on paper, they are free, but the freedom is constrained by a combination of factors. That's the truth of the matter. The media houses are constrained by a combination of factors that also undermine their ability to discharge or to play their role in the society. You have the economics of journalism, for instance. The economics is becoming very, very expensive. Years ago, when some of us practiced journalism, the media houses were able to pick their own bills. But much later in time, you began to see a situation where if a media house was thinking of covering a particular event, the thought will be, who will be the sponsor? Is any bank going to sponsor this event for the coverage of this event for us or not? And if there's no sponsorship forthcoming, that event is not covered.
Absolutely.
So that's the economics are changing. And then, of course, the advert income is dwindling seriously, either because the advertisers have found a new advertising outlet or a new way of reaching out to their target audience, or they just don't even have the money to spare for advertising.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have the overbearing politicians. For you to cover effectively in the rural areas, you have to contend with, in Nigeria, for instance, some state governors who are seen as loss of some sort with absolute powers in their respective sphere of governance. Not too long ago, even under the democracy we say we practice in Nigeria, we saw how journalists were treated, and even as we speak, are being treated by overbearing government officials. So these are constraints, even though on paper, like I said, you said that there's media freedom in Nigeria, but there are constraints that make it impossible for the media to achieve or play their role effectively in the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kena, you brought a very important point, which actually is the next thing I wanted to talk about. In the literature, we'll find that there is so much emphasis on collaborative journalism as an antidote to all this resource challenge. Because the problem has been in the past, most journalists, you spoke to that eloquently. We used to operate in silos, one person, this person doing that. So today, that model is no longer sustainable because people are talking about collaborative journalism as an antidote to surviving underlying resources. For example, collaborative journalism encompasses news organizations working together, on reporting projects, partnering on audience engagement efforts, co-collecting and sharing data, or even teaming up to build technology that supports multiple organizations working toward a shared journalistic goal. Okay? So, like the Panama Papers, especially when you're dealing with investigative journalism that is very expensive, it might be necessary to team up with some other groups instead of just working in silos. In course of this, my research, I've discussed with a number of journalists. One of them told me that, no, we can't do that because we're in competition, And I was quick to remind them that, yes, today competition should give way to cooperation, because the ultimate goal is what you achieve at the end of the day. Like in most African countries where people are still having problems with data sharing and even ordinary things like even, what's it called, this network of a thing, internet access and all that. People can share, things together, especially all these startups, all these online publications and all that. So those are scenarios, and I think you eloquently discussed that. But do you guys, what are your thoughts in terms of this mindset of competition, that we're in a competition, therefore I should not collaborate with anyone? Would that scenario, do you think it's sustainable?
I think that the argument that we're in competition is defeated by the reality of journalism practice today and even years back. We get called to a press conference, for instance. You have all the media houses, the so-called competitors, the so-called rivals. You have all of them assembled in a room being addressed by somebody. At the end of the day, you go out there, you take the story from your own point of view, even though it was the same event. But you go back to your office and everybody goes back to the offices and then they write the same proceedings at the same event from their own perspective. So at the end of the day, you still have the edge you have over the others will be a function of the angle you took in your reporting of that event.
Absolutely.
If you took the right angle, you don't lose anything, rather you gain, and you are recognized for that. So the fact that we are all, the Panama Papers you talked about, yes, the stories came from, or the data came from a single source, but it wasn't reported the same way by the sharers or the communities that are members of that particular group. They reported them differently and benefited maximally from that particular initiative.
Yes.
So, and talking about collaborative journalism and the arrangement you talked, even in other businesses that we have out here, you see some kind of collaboration. When the cell phone was introduced in Nigeria, the various the various telcos had their own what do you call it, cell sites. But over time, instead of coming into a city and you have maybe 5 cell sites serving different, they will now have a situation where all of them will have, will share facilities, share cell sites. At the end of the day, one telco remains superior to the other based on the quality of their own service, even though they are sharing infrastructure.
Yes.
So the quality of your service now becomes the distinction between you and the other.
Chibuala, you want to say something?
Thank you very much. And just to concur with the previous speaker, the circumstances we find ourselves in are calling for more concerted efforts among media personnel and the media houses. And you cannot afford to go it alone because the demands at present are requiring huge sums of money to operate a media house. And sadly, in many African countries, the economies are constrained. And the number of media houses are also so many and competing for limited advertising revenue from same entities, be it private or public sector. So it is just incumbent that media houses come with innovative ways of collaborating with like-minded. Of course, the concern about competition can come in. It's quite a valid argument. However, as the previous speaker indicated, even in the past, you attend the same briefing, but to come out with a different story that is unique and everyone will come to buy a newspaper. We didn't have any constraints. We go to same political rally, extremely same event, everyone is there, and sometimes it will be broadcast live on TV or radio. But the following day, people still come and buy the newspaper because you picked something that is unique, something that is able, that has managed to package a very lengthy speech into something that has been compacted and easy to digest by the readers or the listeners or the viewers. So I think there is need for a change of mindset among media practitioners and media owners to realize that the times we live in, they require innovation. And perhaps in addition to that, I just want to, I'd hope to make a contribution area to say that it is imperative for media houses to look over and beyond just the news and the programs generations, revenue generation. They need to look at other investment opportunities, leveraging on their good names, because you find that many times that media houses build a brand. And once they build a brand, what do they do with that brand? So it's up to the media houses now to leverage on the brand they build to venture into other business avenues that could generate resources which resources could now be used to run the media house. Just to give you a practical example, some time back when I used to work for a newspaper, it was very innovative because it came up with, for instance, issues to do with courier, because we're in the newspaper industry. So every morning, the vehicles would travel 900 kilometers or more across the country, 1,000 kilometers, delivering newspapers. So there was a realization that instead of us just taking newspapers, why don't we add a component of courier service? And that, I think, worked very well. So as much as it was delivering newspapers, it was also raising revenue from courier, which resources were able to run to pay for the vehicles, to buy vehicles, and also pay for the fuels, which helped the newspaper generate more revenue for the operation of the courier company, and indeed the running of the newsroom and other departments of the newspaper as a business. So media practitioners have to start looking at things from to have a business mind and see how there could be those collaboration of ideas. Thank you very much. I think that would be my submission for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a very creative thing, really thinking out of the box. And thank you so much, guys. By closing, I would appreciate if you can develop some ideas on the best way forward. How can we develop like a framework for local news coverage? Are there some ideas on how we can develop an appropriate strategy to enhance local news coverage?
Well, one way I'm looking at it is this. We definitely have to leverage on advances in information technology in pursuing that objective. And leveraging on information technology basically is for the purpose of bringing some level of efficiency in the operation of the business. We have to reduce operating costs, because if a cost is rising, it creates its own problem and makes us less competitive as a business. So we have to do that. And one way of doing that is because, if you recall, you talked about the possibility of creating a new business model. One way of doing that would be, rather than the traditional way of covering some of these areas, is to the rural areas in this case, is to have a reporter stationed in a particular community. Now, the question is, do you really need a full-time reporter or a stringer or a part-time reporter who is on ground. We have to increasingly look at that particular option of rather than having a full-time staff, maybe work out an arrangement where somebody will be providing information. And then, of course, if you have a professional editor at the head office or wherever the newspaper is managed from, to look at the copy coming in from the rural area, give it the news style or the writing style that will fit for that purpose, then that would be okay, instead of just having a fully trained professional station in that community who at the end of the day, because of the way our communities are, rural communities are organized, might not be able to generate the kind of revenue. The newspaper might not be able to generate the kind of revenue that will enable them to maintain that person at that particular location. Go for an alternative, and that alternative will be maybe a part-time reporter who will now be guided by a senior person at the head office in how the news is to be generated and how it is written and eventually packaged for publication. Thank you.
All right. Any other contribution?
Doc, if I can add?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so as we're looking at the model and also looking at maybe a revenue to increase the revenue stream, I gave an example that of radio stations that as a country, we have quite a number of radio stations, community radio stations across the country. So you find that these entities or advertisers that, for instance, they want to appeal to the whole country, a message that appeals to the whole country, or even institutions, even the government institutions that want to appeal to the whole country, they want to deliver the message. One model that could be looked at is these collaborations, as you indicated, to have syndication, for instance, where same message can be placed on one station, but covering widely. And that way, the many radio stations that could participate in that, they could share the profits instead of an institution paying for a program and isolated figures that are perhaps high. They may not be able to go to all the parts of the country. They could be sharing. They share slots. Say, we agree, we're going to do maybe a 15 minutes program, but it's going to be syndicated on all a number of radio stations. And that way, whatever revenue they're able to generate, they shared. So you find that even the rural community radio stations will be able to benefit. So there could be this win-win between the urban community, urban radio stations or urban television stations, and those in rural areas. So there's this sharing of resources. And at the end of the day, there's no one losing out, because you find that even their coverages might be different, the catchment areas. So I think that could be one area that, that needs to be looked at. The other aspect I would want to propose is ensuring that the media personnel are trained in current issues, so that when they report, they go over and beyond to make it easier or appreciated by members of the community or the general public to, for instance, listen to their radio station, to watch their TV station, to visit their websites or to visit their social media pages. Especially now in this competitive era where people are able to access most of the information on social media, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on X, on TikTok and the like. The competition is becoming extremely tough for the media houses. So they have to provide something that is over and above what people can find on social media, because no one will be willing to buy a newspaper when it has information that is just similar to what was on social media or trending on the social media the previous day. So there's need for them to have very well-skilled personnel that can go beyond what sees the eye, to tell a story from a perspective that is able to continue to appeal to the listeners, the viewers, or the readers. And that way they will be able to continue to generate revenue and also to continue to be effective means of communication. As you may appreciate, many times that social media has information that is not verified, and in most instances is fake news. So it's incumbent upon media personnel to be able to provide that news or that information that people will say, okay, this is the truth, this is the accurate information that we're looking out for than what we found on social media. And that's, for me, I think that's the only way that media houses will be able to withstand the force that the social media has come up with, that has brought about. In addition to that, there is need also for media houses themselves to embrace social media platforms. New media, I think now is extremely important. So those media houses that want to remain traditional, they may not remain afloat for long. Because now we're able to see that those that are innovative, TV stations that are innovative, radio stations that are innovative, and other media houses, you find that if they have a radio program, they will even stream it live, for instance, on Facebook. That way, they're able to get more revenue. They are able to get more listeners and viewers. And by implication, they could easily appeal to advertisers and other sources of revenue. And that could become also an avenue for them to advertise or to create advertisement space on those social media platforms. So for me, I think there's need for a change of mindset and embracing these new technologies to better enhance and remain afloat as a business model, as well as a model of ensuring that the survival of the media in general and the profession. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Natasha has some points of view, but let me also say something that you just pointed out. You know, the Reuters Institute of Journalism outlined about 5 new things they say everybody should know about the future of journalism. And number one is actually what the 2 previous speakers touched on. It says that we have moved from a world where media organizations were gatekeepers to a world where media still create the news agenda. Yes, but platform companies control access to the audiences. And the area of media convergence, which is something, honestly, practitioners or media owners should embrace, you know, comes to play. So I think your points are very well noted. Natasha, I guess you say your hand is up. Can you say something?
Actually, I just wanted to second what he was saying about like the content, the content of maybe printed media that should be kind of more research, maybe or more diversified than what is presented on social media platform. I was saying that was a great point. Like you know, what would be the need of buying of buying something that has already been developed on social media. But that brought something in another point that I found really interesting on what he was saying was the readability, right? Readability of the content to the masses if in the printed press. So I think that diversifying, like not separating the type of content that you would have on the press, the traditional press, would be really great to assure its survival. Because what do I mean by like separating from what we have on mostly on social media? The type of news that we have is sensational news, is something that is just for a click. Like something for like the title is just for clicks, so people to click and having money generated. And at times the content is not that well elaborated as in the printed news. I think focusing more on the type of content the press is presenting can, for sure, as Chibola was saying, can really ensure like the survival of the press, focusing more on the content, on what type of content we are presenting and how we elaborate it, and try to make it I remember like I was when I grew up in Douala, Cameroon. I was living in a house where we have like a press house, like how do you call that, the where people sell press. It was just close to my Say it again.
Vendors, newspaper vendors.
Yes, the newspaper vendors, and it was just
Newsstand,
close to. Yeah, and you will see people standing there from morning to night. Nobody will buy. They will just be at the reading the title, because the how do you say that, the
Free Readers Association.
yeah, and they didn't have money to afford to buy it. But the few who could do it actually were, in my experience growing up, were really learned people that could afford it and that could understand actually the development of what was going on in the in the news. So the point is really important for me. I think that the content on social media mostly is sensational content. It's a car jam somebody, it's a woman cheated, it's a wife, it's somebody that will create sensation, somebody that will go, something that will go viral. And usually it does not go deeply into some, into some really important matter. Very scarcely you see that on many social media platforms. There's just the need of sensation of viral to go viral. And I think that focusing more on that could help the press to stay like the printed press or maybe the local press, like more content, more research, more elaboration could help in a way, like to attract a different, not the same type of reader that are on social media, but a different type of reader, bring a different type of reader into the plan, like another type of reader, because usually people going on social media are not actually the same people that go and read the printed press. It's just like there are two different, that separate people. The young people are mostly attracted to social media. The uneducated people also usually most attracted to the social media. Those who easily go to the social media were the people who usually were you call the reader associate. Those who are just reading the title, right? Those were there reading the title. In French, we call it titologue. They were just reading the title. So those are the people that are more attracted to the social media. But the content reader are still in the press. So the press should still focus more on the content, on finding the way to create to have more attracting content, but not dilute to the masses. So that I mean to the readers, not to the masses. So that's my little contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. They call it Free Readers Association. I didn't. They're all over the world. So they just come and stay at this and read. And some newspapers are complaining that the thing is kind of depriving them of some revenue, but I don't know to what extent. I've not researched on that. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. From across the length and breadth of Africa, north, south, east, and Fathia from Cairo. He didn't say anything. I don't know. She's been going off and on. And Winnie Bakajika. So if there, I don't know whether there are other contributions. You want to say something? So in the apps, if there is no in the Burkina Faso. So I would really like to thank all of you for this privilege. I really feel honored that I could you guys and you guys join and share thoughts. With your permission, I'm going to post this to the forum, then the other people didn't come or who may learn from some of the issues we discussed can also play back and listen. And if there are more contributions, I will definitely welcome. Okay, I can see Cyril. Cyril, how is Burkina Faso? Are you in Ouagadougou?
Yeah.
Okay. I see. So I really want to thank
the network is not good.
I know. That's even this, the other Winnie just sent me a message that she's having challenges with her network. So that's what happens with technology. Okay, Winnie, you're here. Winnie, can you hear us? And Juliana, Taiwo, Opaloy, are you there? Winnie? Winnie Bakajika, can you hear us? Oh, she's texting.
She's saying she's here in the chat.
Yes, I'm here, but I have some issue with my network. I'm really, really sorry.
But we're hearing you right now. Do you have some perspectives to share with us in relation to South Africa or Democratic Republic of the Congo? Either because you operate from two sides. So we are looking at the potentials of local news, in rural areas and how the coverage by journalists, and we looked at even the business models, to sustain local news. Are there some thoughts you may want to share, given your own experience from both countries? Winnie, go ahead. Oh, you're really having network challenge, really. Hello? Hello? Yeah, I think she has some network challenges. So for some of us who are saying, Juliana, do you have anything to say? Juliana Taiwan, you are in Abuja. Winnie, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, Winnie says, I'm here, but my network is too bad. All right, so I think we can continue the conversation. If I have a permission of everyone, I will post the meeting on our platform for the benefit of every one of us who did not attend or who may want to revisit some of the issues. And again, it's an ongoing research project, and I still wish to have some other viewpoints as they become necessary, and if we're able to share them. So if there is anything, you can also send me a private conversation, or if you want to share it on the platform, still okay, because I think it's also going to benefit other people as well. Making Magrahi from Sudan, I thank you so much. I think you're also having issues. So, and I think we may have to have, beyond this research project, occasionally we may want to have a meeting like this to discuss topical issues that affect Africa. For example, what is happening in Kenya is something occasionally we can also look at. Even to see, like some of you talked about social media, the power of the social media in moving young people around Nairobi to challenge the government, and government had to capitulate because of the effectiveness of their mobilization using social media. So occasionally, I will hope that we can utilize this forum to enrich our continent and use our professional expertise and skill to support democratic growth in the continent. So thank you once more for joining, and I will set up another Zoom meeting to discuss other issues, unrelated to my research work. Thank you so much, and have a good afternoon or evening wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you.
Siri, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one other day we'll focus on Burkina Faso and the transition and the restrictions on journalists in Burkina.
Okay.
So that
Thank you very much.
we'll look at it as a collective from Africa. Thank you so much. Natasha, thank you so much, and have a good morning in New York.
Thank you. Bye. I'm trying to click on the leave button.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
And I also thank John Bosco from Abuja. I think I'm going to reach out to you privately.
Thank you, Doc.
To discuss your unique funding model in your rural community.
That's no problem, Doc.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.